John, your lecture is on standardized measures of cognition versus laboratory testing. One of the most common deficiencies in the world is iron deficiency. But the tests on cognitive function and iron deficiency are very controversial. What is your opinion?
Well, generally speaking, I think the best strategy for evaluating the effects of any nutrient is to understand what that nutrient does in the brain and in the body, and then target a specific outcome that reflects that underlying mechanism. And so iron is a particularly difficult one because it's so widespread and has so many different mechanisms to affect physiology and behavior. But the general, I think the thing I would come back to is I would look at the most common or the most robust effect with respect to brain function, and then look at the manifestation of that in behavior. That would be the basic strategy that I approach.
But when we look at the testing which has been done so far, are you happy with this, or would you require more specific tests to find out what iron deficiency? Yeah. I'm not talking about severe anemia, when the oxygen supply might be insufficient.
Iron is a really specific case, though, with very clear an upper limit on toxicity and all. So my own evaluation of the iron literature is that it actually is, people working in iron have been sensitive to this issue for a long, long time. People working in that area were the front runners in the inclusion of these kinds of specific tasks. I don't know how well it has worked out. And, iron deficiency produces clear physiologic effects, and there's also toxicity at the other end of things. But whether it can be demonstrated that there are targeted specific behavioral outcomes, I think still remains controversial. I can't add more to that.
Okay. What kind of tests would you recommend if you suspect?
I think if you use that blip about, I would have to answer. I wouldn't want to talk about iron because they have already used a lot of those tasks that I've recommended, and I'm not. I think some of them came up. They mostly came up empty. I think the general strategy of understanding underlying mechanisms that are affected by the nutrient, and then targeting specific behavioral outcomes that reflect those mechanisms is the best way. Not just here is an outcome that's available, and let's use it because it's convenient. I didn't want to say this in the talk, but a lot of this is a matter of convenience. What can we measure at a particular time? And this is available and it's certainly feasible to do it. So let's just use that. And the general idea, is that within the area of nutrition is that I didn't put this so much in my slides because it would have been a really complicated point, is that one of the predictions of a general intelligence model is that it doesn't matter what you measure because it's all driven by the general factor. So if you want to take one measure, and this age you want to take a different measure, it should be okay because they're all going to be correlated and they're all going to be driven by this general factor. And so that's a lot of what I would characterize as sort of carelessness in the choice of measures in some early nutritional studies is driven by that general theoretical point of view.
John, you're talking about standardized measures of cognition versus laboratory tests. Are there really biochemical biomarkers and imaging biomarkers where you're pretty confident that they show you something in relation to a nutritional deficit, that can identify something?
Absolutely. I think biochemical markers are very important to document what's happening in the body. And I'm a firm believer that measurement of neuroimaging measures are important in documenting the effect of a nutrient on the brain. Clearly, those two are important, but it's very important to have them as complements to behavioral outcomes because the strongest case scientific case for the effect of a nutrient is if you have all three of those pointing in the same direction. That way you know what the nutrient has done to the body, you know what it's done to the brain, and you know that there is a particular behavioral manifestation of that outcome that is important or meaningful in the long run.
Thank you very much.